And welcome, everybody. This is Coach Les, Life's podcast, video cast with the Ziegler Legacy Club on Clubhouse. And we are here today, and we are going to be discussing the mark of a healthy relationship. And that mark is security, which is a result of trust. And how do we create and grow that level of trust? So I want to start off by saying the interesting thing here, as we were just getting everything started, is we had a brief conversation about what it is to trust people. Now that a lot of people do business at home, that are on podcasts and on stages like on Clubhouse and also in Zoom, and they are hearing the noises of life in the background. And to me, this is a trust factor that it is allowing us into the life of their home and hearing it. So hearing it more from a positive aspect rather than a negative aspect of, oh my goodness, can't you quiet that down? Where's your business etiquette? Instead, we're starting to see people that smile, that are looking at real life scenarios and the security and creation of a bond that comes for spending time behind, quote unquote, behind closed doors in people's homes. And the book that I'm going to be dealing with and sharing from today in this chapter on healthy relationship is security, which is a result of trust, and the critical laws of relationship by Rob D. Thompson. He starts off by saying, in other words, if you're in a relationship where you're constantly having to look over your shoulder, get out. You're in the wrong relationship. This both goes for work and for personal. This law that he's introducing, the law of covenant, good relationships may begin because of common purpose, mutual support, and so forth, but they endure because of commitment and covenant. So what do we mean by covenant? Modern society, for the most part, is sorely bereft of understanding in matters of covenant. The blatant evidence of this ignorance is displayed daily in courtrooms, businesses, churches, and homes all over the world. Transience rather than longevity is the order of the day. In our spiritually bankrupt Western culture, for example, it is common for people to hire lawyers to help them find a way to break their word or commitment rather than keep it. The Hebrew word for covenant is berith, which means a cutting or a compact made by passing between two pieces of flesh. It is similar to the ancient Assyrian word biritu, which means fetter, chain, or to bind. The covenant being that which binds together the parties who enter such an agreement. The phrase cutting a covenant is derived from an ancient custom where an agreement between two parties was confirmed by slaughtering and cutting an animal into two halves. Each party would pass between the two pieces, pledging his faithfulness to the covenant. This ceremony signified that if either of them were unfaithful and broke the covenant, his life would be destroyed, as was the slain and divided beast. In essence, a covenant is an agreement, but a serious agreement of a solemn and binding force. It is an agreement between two people that involves promises and requirements on the part of each to the other. Each party is binding him or herself to fulfill certain conditions, while also being assured of certain privileges. In biblical covenants, God was solemnly invoked as a witness to the covenant, and an oath, a promise to keep the agreement, was sworn. This calling upon God as a witness explains, for example, why the marriage contract is called the covenant of God. Because the unchanging, eternal God was the witness to every type of covenant. A breach of covenant was regarded as a heinous sin. In its earliest form, covenant established a blood brotherhood in which two men became brothers by drinking each other's blood. Eek! Ordinarily, this meant that one was adopted into the clan of the other. The establishment of a covenant bound an individual not only to his new blood brother, but also to his brother's family, his community, and his gods. In this early idea, then, the covenant was not a mere alliance made to gain certain goods or advantages. Rather, it was a sacred declaration of fidelity. It bound the parties together not only in material goods, but also in every other arena of life. In later covenants, there were various substitutes for the drinking of each other's blood, namely drinking together the animal's sacrificial blood, sprinkling it upon the parties, eating a sacrificial meal together, and so on. All these methods were used to express the same idea, the fettering together of lives resulting from a covenant. Because of the serious life-altering implications surrounding the making of a covenant, these agreements were entered into with solemn ceremony. Usually, covenant making involved the following principal elements: a statement of the terms agreed upon. The terms of the covenant were clearly laid out and always all-inclusive. An oath by each party to observe the terms, God being witness of the oath. The oath was such a characteristic feature that sometimes the term oath is used interchangeably with the word and term covenant. A curse invoked by each one upon himself in the event that he broke the agreement. In a sense, this may be considered a part of the oath, adding emphasis to it. This curse was usually not explicitly stated in the case of human covenants, but was inferred in covenants between God and man. This formal ratification of the covenant by some solemn external act. It is by this act that the covenant was sealed. The different ceremonies for this sealing could include sprinkling of the sacrificial animal's blood upon parties, eating a common meal, sharing grains of salt. A covenant of salt, as it was called, originated in Eastern cultures. It was also called the covenant of friendship, thus the phrase to eat salt together. Salt, the antidote to corruption, was used in every sacrifice to denote purity and perpetuity. So a perpetual, everlasting covenant was often sealed with salt. A material pledge, the presentation of a gift, setting up a monument such as a heap of stones. So there are many, many types of conditions and promises throughout the space of God. Genesis, Deuteronomy, Proverbs, Ezekiel. And there were two sides to a covenant. It always involved both individuals putting something into the relationship. Covenant is conditional. In order to be a beneficiary of the advantages of the covenant relationship, each party must fulfill the obligatory requirements of the relationship. To seek the benefits or the promises of a covenant without meeting the conditions was considered a breach of the covenant. Let's look at some examples of biblical covenants and examine the conditions and promises behind them, and then we'll speak about some more modern day ones. God with Abraham. God with Israel. With Israel, the condition of the covenant was that Israelites accept, keep, and obey the words of God, as found in the Ten Commandments. In return, God promised to bless Israel with protection, provision, and prosperity. They would enjoy victory over their enemies and experience the outpouring of his spirit. As with Abraham, this covenant was ratified and sealed by circumcision. David and Jonathan, God and mankind. God's covenant with mankind is one of love and loyalty. It is somewhat different because it's a covenant of grace. It was God's grace through Jesus' life, ministry, death, and resurrection, and not man's response, that ratified this covenant. God guaranteed that he would provide salvation in spite of man's inability, because of his sin, to keep his side of the covenant. The benefits of this covenant are almost too marvelous to describe. Through this covenant, believers are justified by God's grace and mercy rather than their own human attempts to keep the law. They obtain forgiveness of sins, a personal relationship with God, and eternal life in heaven. They have the power to live free from wrongdoing and to walk in divine wholeness in body, mind, and spirit. They can enjoy material, emotional, relational, and spiritual prosperity. Through his spirit, they have peace, joy, life, love, and many more benefits. What a powerful covenant. Although this is a covenant of grace, it is nonetheless a covenant. Unlike any covenant, it is conditional. The condition is that those who enter this covenant repent of their sin, put their faith in the personal saving power of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Then they are expected to express this faith through a grateful and obedient lifestyle. So, with this, this was the piece that I wanted to share and move forward. The law of covenant has a tremendous amount more to it, but I want to share the Cliff Notes version of the latter parts. The law of covenant, the mark of a healthy relationship, is security, which is a result of trust. To seek the benefits or the promises of a covenant relationship without meeting the conditions is considered a breach of the covenant. We've said that already. The most accurate test of character occurs when we are thrown into the lion's den of humanity. Character ensures the integrity of covenant. The prodigal feels that he is entitled to the resources of another, while the protege responds to whatever he receives with heartfelt gratitude. Your value in any relationship is determined by your diversity. Your value in any relationship is the difference that you can bring to cause success to come to your friend. Yes. Your value to others is in direct proportion to the problems you solve for them. A covenant not made is a covenant not enjoyed. The evidence of love is the pledge to protect. The only difference between control and correction lies in the heart of the receiver, and the manner in which you treat a relationship when you no longer need it reveals the motive you had for it from the beginning. And lastly, commitment is the willingness to stay long after others have said goodbye. So that is the law of the covenant. And I wanted to take this because I believe that in our conversation and what we're up to and what we've shared in the integrity and in some of the rooms with Sujata on the podcast, for me, this is an area that is sorely lacking in integrity. Today, there are people that get married because it's convenient, and they get divorced because it's even more convenient, rather than hold fast the covenant and move forward, causing a breakthrough. So I would love to hear a little bit about what each of you hear or heard in what I was sharing about covenant, about our relationships, and not only the relationship to a significant other, right? Because I know each of you here would have beautiful shares, and I would love to hear those as well. I would also like to hear about your covenant with your businesses and also with your clients. And then at the towards the end, I'll share my thoughts on it as well, and share with you a couple of areas where I've had breakthroughs and breakdowns in this arena. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to you, Brother Joey, to kick us off.
Sure. Thinking about my current work, I think that would be the relationship currently right now, besides the one with my wife and my family, that is most important to me. And I think of I think of my responsibility, and I think of the responsibility of my employer, the responsibility of the employee and the responsibility of the employer. So, when I think of past work relationships, currently right now, I've said this before in many rooms that we've been together. Currently right now, I really feel like I'm working for a stellar employer, and a lot of that has to do with just how they view us as. Look, I think it has a lot to do with how they see their company as being a superior brand in the marketplace, superior product in the marketplace, and I think that a lot of that has to do with trademark excellence goes to the product all the way down to each individual employee. And so when I think about the covenant that I have with my company, right, we didn't sign anything, we didn't drink blood or make that commitment like we've seen, in the Bible, or what we may have done at marriage with our spouse. But I think there's a certain understanding that we have with each other, and I think that that the relationship will always work best, and I'm experiencing it. With great conversations, with great openness, with integrity, with communicating well, and that goes for both of us. And as the employee, there's a great level of comfort that I have with my employer. That makes this work. I'm not sure if they get to call the shots. I have a tendency to like to call myself the CEO of my company, which is my family, and maybe I'm the co-CEO of that company with my wife. I like to think that yes, I have an employer, and I am the employee, but I think for the relationship to work, and for it to work well, for them to be successful and for me to be successful, we both have to have a feeling of we're both in this together. We both have responsibility, and I think if we're going to talk spouses and relationships, I think the same thing. There can't be one that lords over the other. I think when we talk about covenant, I think that there has to be, in my opinion, some sort of equal playing field. Those are my thoughts now. I may have some more thoughts as I hear other people share, because I always love to respond, and I'm hoping that my views become enlightened by other people sharing, Coach. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Joey. Appreciate it. And I just want to do a quick shout out. Welcome to Annie and Eurelis. Would love it if you could come up on stage and share. I'm sure by the time we have gone through the next three people, you'll have an idea. And I will also just reiterate the question as well if need be. So with that, I pass the mic to you, Michelle. What are your thoughts about the covenant?
The covenant I definitely had was with my husband and I. I can remember even before we got married, we promised each other that we're always going to be together. We even talked about marriage. We talked about how we want our marriage. I mean, we had communication, and it was very successful. I want to tell you something that I never expected to happen in my life was when we got our marriage certificate, my husband put it in a frame and hung it up. How many husbands do that?
That's pretty awesome.
And he really believed in our marriage. He really like. I think that's lost. People have expectations in how they want this person to change for them, this person to do this or that. And I noticed that intimacy with people is gone. They're afraid to have a covenant, to be intimate with someone. I'm finding it so different. Things have changed since I lost my husband. I see people are totally different. I actually went out with a friend. We didn't meet. We did go on a date. It did actually turn out terrible. It turned out terrible because it was kind of sad because he had expectations on me that I wasn't what he wanted, but it was to a point where it was kind of selfishly. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain. You know what I mean? And I just see things different. So I see things differently with how people are with each other. I don't know if it's just me, but because I had a healthy relationship with my husband, and times have changed. So that's my feeling on it, Coach. And maybe what happened in my life. So you can have the mic. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Thank you.
Michelle, it's wonderful. And here's the thing. I don't think times have changed. People are trying to break and redefine covenant, and it's not working.
It doesn't seem like it's working. I don't know how I got it right with my husband, but I noticed even people online, they don't want closeness, or they just want texting. You're right. I think people redefine covenant, and it just seems so. People just seem far away, Coach. Just saying.
Yep. There you go. You hit the nail on the head.
Thank you. You're up next. Whoever's up next.
Dee, you're up next, Dee.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Well, a covenant, like explained, it should be something that is binding, that is well understood on both parts, be something where you have mutual values and ethics and things like that, and where respect is something that's very important. Communication is very important. And communication, I mean, you could do a whole thing on just communication. Women communicating with women do better, and men communicating with men do better. But still, we have different backgrounds. We have different things that happen to us. So even if it's just same sex, maybe somebody had a certain look, when they were going to do something, or they may have a certain tone of voice or something from your childhood, and it means one thing to you, but then to somebody else it means something entirely different. So there can be lots of different interpretations, even in your same sex communications, where a lot is misunderstood, and it gets even more so when it's between men and women, because they're physically, the brain of men and women are different. That's wired different, and then also culturally, how we're raised, what's expected, and men's ways of interacting with, or even boys interacting with boys and girls interacting with girls are not the same. And so there's even more of a space for misunderstanding. And I think understanding of anything is pretty important, because when there isn't any, things just don't work too well. That's pretty much all I can think of at the moment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dee. Thanks for sharing. And we pass the mic to Sarah.
It's a very interesting topic. It is. It's really interesting. I mean, I've not really thought about it, but picking up from what everybody's been touching on, I mean, my own personal opinion is that covenant, back when they were first formed, however many years ago that was, aren't the same things now. I mean, we talk about covenant now, and it's a completely different thing. I mean, it's quite scary. I mean, in the Bible, the Lord talks about even just as a basic salt covenant, where God promises to provide for the Israelites. It was through a salt covenant. He made a promise to the Israelites, and I mean, for me personally, it's having a covenant with God is the first and foremost and most important thing, because human beings change regardless of promises that we make. As we age, as our mind, ideas change, we change. So we can't even keep a promise to ourselves sometimes. But when we have a covenant with God, I mean, God never changes, first and foremost. I mean, entering into like a human relationship is, say, in a business environment. From my own personal perspective, when I'm dealing with clients, maybe they don't have the same frame of mind or the way of thinking. I go into that relationship as that I want to protect my clients. That's how I approach it. But not all clients are the same. Some clients are more receptive to the idea, whereas others might try and take advantage of it. So again, it's who you're getting into covenant with. Covenants aren't the same as what they were. Some people want to circumvent them. Even in the secular law, covenants now are totally different to what they were when the Bible was a basis of law. Now things are changing so rapidly. Even between in a marriage or a communion between a man and a woman, things have changed. So to define a covenant now, it's a totally different thing, and it's almost like a moving target from my observation. So I think my safest bet is to go back to where I started, and that's with my covenant with God, and then from that covenant, that then is my moral compass as to how I would navigate my other relationships. And I rest my mic.
And Sarah, I think, I want to point out a couple things from what you said. One is one of the commandments, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself, right? And how I extrapolate that is, I do unto others as I would have them do unto me. And I think people don't live that way anymore, as you say. And I believe that we have the ability to create that level of integrity with ourselves and with our clients. So I know for myself, one of the things that I do my best to create with my clients is, look, it's not if we're going to make a mistake with each other, it's when. And when we make that mistake, how are we going to work our way through it without creating a breach in integrity that destroys our business relationship? And how can we use God, whether independent of which belief in God, Catholic, Protestant, whatever that we have, and yet we can set that good moral compass, and we can find that quote unquote covenant, that shared space for us to be able to build from. And for me, I look at that, and I think today in business, there always seems to be a back door available. Here in Minnesota, one of my clients is a law firm, and they do small business, legal work with small businesses. And one of the things that he says in Minnesota, even if you have a contract, you can break it. Even if you have a non-compete in this state, you can break it. And the way that they get around it is by saying you can have a non-compete, but, quote unquote, if it's the only business and it's the only way to put money on your table, you can break that agreement. And I look at that and I go, so what's the point of the agreement? And the attorney looks and says, well, keeps me in business. And I look at that and he goes, and I do my best to defend these. People come to me and I look at writing them in such a way that I can defend them, knowing full well the ramifications of how people can weasel out of them. So,
Coach, you are right, and that's actually the national standard. If you can prove that by signing that non-compete, either A, you were coerced, B, you didn't know that was the only skill that you had. For instance, if you're in the business of picking up garbage and you sign a release with a garbage company, you'll never do that with anybody else, but yet that's all you've ever done, then automatically that goes down as a non-valid document. So what you're saying is absolutely true. And a lot of it has to do with attorneys expressing themselves and pushing. But when it comes down to it in a court hearing, if you can prove that you have no other abilities, that's it. You're a one man band. Then they've got you, or you've got them. Actually, just FYI, that's pretty much nationwide.
So it's nationwide. I just knew it was here in Minnesota, and we're speaking about. We're talking about the critical laws of relationship, and we're speaking about the mark of a healthy relationship is security, which is a result of trust. And the first thing we discovered and discussed, thanks to Rob D. Thompson, was a covenant, and what that covenant is and how it works, and the conditions and promises, that it's more than an agreement. And we've touched on the two major ones. One is marriage, of course, and the second is business. So, Sarah, thank you. I love what you shared. And Robert, I'd love to hear your opinion, whether you want to talk about the marital covenant. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. And I'd also love to hear your opinion on the covenant that can or could exist in business.
Okay, well, with the fact and understanding that I just came into the room, let me state, with respect to the marriage covenant or the relationship covenant, what used to be in 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the 80s has drastically changed. We have a society now where the main reason people are getting married is for financial stability, and they're trying to merge themselves together in order to be able to afford a place to live. Okay, the people who are young and in that certain group, the millennials and the generations Gen Zs, they're not too excited about religion, organized religion, whether it's Mormon, whether it's Catholic, whether it's Presbyterian, whatever it happens to be. And that's a very, very serious matter because the analytics don't lie. Harvard University did a study on that, and they found that that's just not something that that generation is focusing on. It's kind of like I'll call it the TikTok generation. They believe that they can go on TikTok and make their $20,000 a month and that they're good. And I'm sure, Coach, you've heard of people like that.
Mm-hmm.
What the reality is they need to be out there getting a job, and that gets back to the other issue about why people don't want to work. And we've analyzed that in great detail, and it's just the exact same thing. They feel entitled. They don't want to. They don't feel like that they need to put in the effort, and they feel and they're obviously being mentored by their family. So it's monkey see, monkey do. Whatever mom and dad did, I don't want to do because I'll end up being where they're at. And this is probably the only generation that can say that they're going to end up at a lower place than where their family was. So that's discussing the personal commitment. As far as marriage goes, unless you're in a very, very tight religion, where marriage is of the essential component, and you live in a village, I would say. I just out loud, I'm thinking Utah, Coach.
Right.
But if you're in an area like that, then you have a chance. You do have a chance. But if you're anywhere else, if you're in Texas, if you're in Los Angeles, if you're in New York, if you're in Miami, that is not going to be conducive to how do I say it? I'll just say it the way it is. There is so much confusion over what is a date. A guy now has to wonder, is this going to cost me? So if I ask this girl on a date, how much is it going to cost me? Do you follow what I'm saying when I say that? There's so much confusion as to the role, as to what they're going to do if they take somebody out. Is this girl, and maybe it's because I live in Vegas, but I mean, it's absolutely terrible. It's horrific. It's horrific. So that's my answer towards the personal one-on-one relationship. I'll let you follow up and then I'll continue. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, I think the other thing is about that dating thing, and I'd love to hear from Sarah D or Michelle on this. And I see Emmy's in the room. Oh, beautiful.
Yep.
And even Joey with his daughters. But I often hear of my female friends that will tell me, if I don't sleep with the guy on the third date, they dump me. I'm like, what? Oh, yeah. If they take me out, and sometimes it's even so bad that on the first date, if I don't go home and sleep with them after they've paid for a movie or a show or a dinner, they look at me like something's wrong with me.
Now, you've touched on a subject there, which is absolutely 1,000% true. And I'm sorry, Michelle. Go ahead, please.
No, I interrupted you. I want to tell you a story. I went on a date, I would say 4 weeks ago. He told me that, can I pay half of the date? I'm not even of a meal. I couldn't even believe it. Or can you pay part of the tip? I'm so confused. He's in his 50s. I don't think it's just younger generation. I'm sorry. When I was married to my husband, when he dated me, it was totally different. He was wonderful. He was everything. What happened? What happened? Sorry.
Let me run something by you, Michelle. You look at that as a negative. I look at that as an extreme positive. Okay, and let me explain why. Because Coach annotated and outlined what the expectation is. I mean, whereas some of these people, let me say it. If a man takes a woman out and the argument is, I bought you this and spent this and we went and did this, then in a sense you owe me, right? What by you covering some of the money, then you remove some of that argument. So I would say kudos to you if you can remove that. Now the question is, Coach mentioned that if a girl doesn't sleep with a guy in the first date, 2 days, 3 dates, that she's going to get ghosted and that's the end of it. That's true. There's no question about that. And that's where it gets back to that. Well, you know what? It gets back to the Tinder-ish dating profile. Click right, click left, and it's very, very quick. There's nothing extraordinary about making your choices. You're simply looking and making, hundreds and hundreds of decisions a minute. And that's the way people are dating. And they don't even want to call it dating. They want to call it hooking up. So it's implied that they get together, and that's the way to do it. Now, in my generation, it'd be like, well, you go to church, you meet somebody, or you go to the office and you meet somebody, and a colleague or something. I mean, that's a possibility. But now it's just so fast. I mean, that it's so fast that when the text goes out, girls get upset if you don't respond quickly. Guys get upset if you don't respond quickly. I mean, there's just such an expectation that makes it very, very difficult. Coach, what do you think? Or Joey, I saw you, Joey.
Well, Sarah, let's hear from. Let's go back and forth with the ladies.
Please.
Sarah, go ahead.
It's amazing. It's amazing. What you mentioned, Coach, and your response, Robert. Well, in this day and age, men better be careful, because that third date might turn out to be a disaster on your part, because you might find out that woman you thought was a woman wasn't a woman.
Oh my God.
Sarah, you oh my goodness, you hit the nail on the head, Sarah.
I don't even know what, Coach. I don't even have an answer for that. That's weird.
I have an answer for that.
But that's how we're living.
Wow.
That's the age we're living in now.
We are.
So men need to put the brakes on.
Well, and I think, Sarah, I remember dating back in 1991 and going to San Francisco, and I was in the there was a name for it, where all the jazz area was, and it was this beautiful nighttime activity with jazz and music and in the bars, and everybody was walking in the streets, and I can't remember the name of the area. Anyway, I met an amazing lady, spent a tremendous amount of time with her that night, and then met up with her the following night, and come to find out it was a man.
Oh my God.
And even my friends, Emmy with her eyes, even came to find out from my friends, they didn't believe me. They said, Les, there's no way. There was no way. She was stunning. Everything about her was stunning. Her legs, everything, her facial, everything. And I said, guys, you can't make that stuff up.
So, Coach, what did you do? And I know what I would do. I know what we're trained to do, but I don't know whether I could use my training to. I think I would blow. You know what I mean? I think I would blow a gasket.
No, I mean, all I said was, I'm sorry. I really enjoyed our time together. And to me, this was subversive, and it was an agenda.
Yes.
And, I'm sorry I don't fit your profile. I've appreciated our time together. And, that was the end of it. And I look at that today and what Sarah just said. And I think we are now in a world, both business and by the way, I'm going to swing right into a business piece here as well.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, but go ahead.
Because I believe there's no difference. There are companies that are hiring people, promising the world, and employees don't sign anything. There's nothing signed. It's all blue sky. And they come on board. And just like the blue sky that I was faced with in the 90s, which I can imagine today is, 100 times different because of the surgical stuff. And we go into these things, and I look and I go, okay, so I am blessed because my wife, Kristen, and I, when we started dating, we're coming up on being married 4 years. And when we dated, we made a pact, nothing physical. And we got to know each other, and we got to know and I got to know her kids, and I got to know all about her prior to anything, prior to any physical touch. And you could say I followed, well, first of all, I had a dating coach, and I followed the biblical plan for the first time in my life. I'm not necessarily proud to say that. I'm just going to say that.
And coach, look at your results, my friend. I mean, by the fact that you did that, I mean,
of course, but
you basically created an entire new reality of what could be if you would follow the, as you said, the biblical plan.
Yep.
I mean, and there are so many people now who, I mean, they wouldn't even understand what the biblical plan is. But the bottom line is, there's just they just simply are accepting. I mean, and I have to be very careful, because I don't have to be politically correct. I can say what I want. The bottom line is, people think the LGBTQ or whatever the hell it is normal, and I don't know who normalized that. I don't know who brought that to the table that said this is right. This is what we should do. But you know what? I stand down, and I'm gonna. If there's anything like that in my life, then I'm gonna do what I can to avoid it. That's where I stand, and I stand on that side as a businessman also. So if somebody disagrees with that, then they can hang me up and try to talk to me, but they're never going to get through, because there's. I just don't get it.
Well, and here's the thing about that, Robert, right? As we're talking about covenants here,
Right.
the thing about that community, right? Just like there's a community out there that believes that selling drugs is okay, just like there's a community that believes that thievery and gambling is okay. That's okay. It's going to exist out there. That doesn't mean that I have to alter my view to incorporate that as okay.
That's correct.
And that's the difficulty that I have with all of this, is somebody is telling me that I have to alter my view. And it's like, now, wait a minute. I don't have to alter my view about gambling. I don't have to alter my view about drugs. Why do I have to alter my view about sex change? Right? I mean, to me, for me, if you want to do it, that's your choice. I look at, don't have your choices impact my life. And I say that in a way that, don't make that, just like gambling and any of that world, right? Or drugs. I don't want somebody coming into my yard, gambling and doing drugs and selling drugs in my yard. I don't want somebody, the LGBT community, coming into my yard and doing that in my yard. To me, that's forcing me to comply with somebody else's covenant. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. However, let me be very clear. Your view that you're stating right now is going to cause controversy from hell, because there are some people that are going to call you out, and they're going to say you're this, 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 and this. So you have to be prepared whenever you make statements like that. Just as I'm very aware, and I don't care personally. That's just my opinion.
It's not that I don't.
I stand by what I believe.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, here's the thing, Robert. I get that, what you're saying. It's not that I want them to change what they're doing. They can do whatever they want to do.
It doesn't need to be in your world, though, sir.
It doesn't need to be in my world, and I don't want them to force my world to shift. I will accept them. I will sit down with them and have a conversation with them. I will look at the walk of Christ and minister to them as I would a gambler, as I would a drug addict, as I would anybody. So to me, I don't look at them as any different than a human being that is dealing with their humanity.
Sin.
I love that. Emmy, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we are called to separate the sin from the sinner. We're gonna love the sinner, hate the sin. That's how I approach it. They're like, I'm gonna love you, but I'm not gonna agree with what you do.
Exactly. But do you
you can't force me.
Right, but can you see
You
into
can't
the
force me to agree with you with what you do.
I'm
I'm not gonna comply.
I have a question though, Emmy. I have a question. Do you think that society is trying to force you to comply with it though?
So there are
All the time.
there is a certain thing that there is a saying, a squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the more they scream, the more they sound. They're bigger and wider in number. To me, I'm gonna consider them one person. It's my choice to consider them one person. I'm gonna choose to consider them one person, and when I deal with it face to face, I'm gonna be out loud as I can be. They're not gonna shout me down. I'll shout back.
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, this is my stand. You wanna kick me? Kick me. I went to a rally in DC, and they called me racist. I'm like, you're looking at a black woman. What you calling me racist for? I'm like, yeah, I was standing up for Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh, when he went down there, and they said, she's a liar. I just heard what she just said. It is a lie. I'm going to stand there for him. I'm going there. I went down there. And a whole lot of people were like calling me racist. And I'm like, who are you calling racist?
Isn't it funny? It is just it's so hypocritical, right? The hypocrisy in some of what is happening. And Emmy, you hit a nail on the head that I completely forgot about. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yep.
And the more they squeak, the more the politicians go, "Ooh, look, this is the new thing. So I got to jump on board because I'm going to get all the votes."
I think we need to remember that at the end of the day, the Lord has told us that we will be crucified about it. Our stand to stand with what he told us to stand for, the world is going to hate us. And we just have to make that choice and decision. No matter what, you're going to push me, you will push me, but I'm not going to budge in. Absolutely not going to budge in. This cost us a lot of things. You guys were talking about dating. I'm like, okay, is this a dating class? I need it. Let me listen to it.
You're not the only one, that's for sure.
So
Same
I'm like,
here. I need it too.
All day long.
Maybe other people need it. Maybe I'm on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I signed in for eHarmony because I was encouraged to do so. I'm not dating. I have not dated for 15 years. I purposely put in there God, and extremely conservative in there. Nobody's knocking the door. It was like, okay, Lord, this is it. I'm not budging in. Whoever you're sending, he's gonna knock the door and come in because I don't know what to do. So, but yeah, I'd rather die than compromise what God has given me. This is it. I'm set for life. Jesus or die.
Amen, Emmy. I love it. I love what you just said.
So I have one. I'm curious to hear Joey's conversation about some of this, because I know he has a couple of daughters that are in this in the age bracket of being newly into the business world, newly into graduating, and would love to hear your take on this, Joey, or if you could share some of your daughter's thoughts on this.
Well, a lot has been said in the last 30 minutes. As far as I'm going to go back to, though, I think the covenant conversation, back to the relationships, and I could use my daughters as an example. I have, or at least make them a talking point. They both have boyfriends for quite some time now. I'll give you an example of how I think we may see things this way now, but then if we go back in time, we realize, oh wait, it was pretty bad back then too. Music today seems awful, and I'm speaking from a position of an older now guy or an older gentleman, and hear a lot of parents, and I've heard a lot of talk about music and how this generation, and when I say generation, I remember being a young youth myself, and that was always the conversation. The music is terrible, and rightfully so. We're still saying the same thing. But has anyone ever gone back and watched Grease? You cannot watch Grease with your children if they're under 15. It's awful. So I bring that up to say this. I don't know if I agree with the idea that the generation today is different, and there's no covenant, or there's no desire to be in a covenant. I will agree that there's obviously some differences between years ago. We're going to have to go far back, in my opinion, maybe to the 50s. But quite honestly, I think there was a lot of broken covenant back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I just think because of fear of public image, I just either think the male or the female remained silent. And I think that if those relationships were today, I don't think we'd be able to say that there was a great covenant back then. I just think that there was a lot of shame in relationships. I think that so I say that to say this. I think because of human nature, I think we want and we desire to have relationships, and I think some of us do. But I think there's always going to be a certain, and maybe I'm going to turn this off because I know where I'm going. Maybe in today's world, it just appears that the covenant relationship is gone. But maybe it's just because people have become more bold in their own self, and they're not putting up with terrible spouses. That's just my thought. When I heard us talking about it before, the one thing I want to always kind of be careful of, because I think it's something that we can fall into, is the world has changed, and years ago it was this way. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if. If we're going to say that, do we believe in evolution? I don't. I think humanity has always been fallen. I think we've always had awful relationships and awful people in this world, and I'm glad to know that my two daughters both value their relationships and their dating. But look, they went through a lot of relationships before they got to this point, and you know what? So did I. Now in the 80s and the 90s.
Oh, and I'm with you, Joey. I'm with you on that. I really am. I'm not saying that I've got a halo by any means. What I'm asserting is, in this, is that the drama of breaking the covenant and the ability to break it out loud and be out there about it and be okay with it is much worse than it used to be. And I think part of that is because of social media and making it the norm.
Yeah, I think so. But I think if we could, and once again, we can't go back and ask this. I think if we can go back though and ask a lot of those relationships in the 50s and the 60s, if you could have gone back and divorced your husband, would you have? We probably would probably find out that there'd be a lot more divorce. It just wasn't the norm. So I agree with you there. It just wasn't the norm. A lot of it was because of the shame that was involved in it. That's just my take on it. Of course, I'm just me. That's just my take on it. I bet there's a lot of people that went to their grave with a lot of stuff that nobody knew about that did not honor the marriage covenant.
Oh, huge. I mean, Joey, I know this, and Sarah, I'd love to hear your take on this. But in England, I remember speaking when I first moved over to the US and I was introduced to the world of the gay community in a blinding way. My mom said, the only difference, Les, is this was my stepmom who grew up in Nottingham. She said the only difference in Europe and in England was it was all behind closed doors. Everybody knew that such and such a person was gay. Everybody knew that they were living together, but it wasn't, nobody, like shouted out loud about it. They didn't hang flags outside their house. They didn't walk up and down the streets parading saying, we demand more rights, right? Because they were, and this is, and I may not even be saying this right, but because they were quiet about it, because it was just there, they both had all the rights that we all had. This is according to my mom. There was no difference. There was no, they didn't get certain rights. There just was, there wasn't anything that they got that we didn't get, or we got that they didn't get. So I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, Sarah, but what's your take on the way, because I know you and I know you're from England, and we know that it's been there forever. It's been there since the Roman times.
Yeah, I mean, I take on board what you're saying, and Joey's been saying as well. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of the things and behaviours that are happening now is because of squeaky wheels, making a lot of noise, and but at the end of the day, yes, it has been there for a long time, undercover, covered up. And it was illegal back in the day. It was a disgrace back in the day. There was an element of shame. Now that has gone. People can live how they want, when they want, and everything. But we've got to remember that this is God's earth. And at the end of the day, he has the last say. And if whatever it says in the Bible, if we don't abide by it, yes, fair enough, we might enjoy ourselves here. But, going back to the covenant thing, French, my covenant, my primary covenant is with God. So if, as far as how I live is what he says goes, because I know I ain't going to stay on this earth forever. So if people want to live how they want and it's legalized, that's their prerogative, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever they want to live, however they want to live, yes, you can talk to them.
And with that, I'm going to close down today, the video podcast, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you all for being here.